Hey, my name's Ethan. I'm 24, and I left my small hometown behind to chase whatever scraps of opportunity I could find in the big city. I ended up landing a job as a kitchen assistant and groundskeeper at this massive villa perched on a hillside overlooking the Pacific in California. It wasn't glamorous, far from it. The pay was just enough to cover basics, and I lived in a tiny room tucked away behind the kitchen with a creaky bed, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, and a shower that spat out cold water most mornings. I ate cold leftovers from the day's prep work, and my days blurred into a routine of scrubbing pots, trimming hedges, and avoiding eye contact with anyone who might notice I didn't quite belong in a place like this. The owner, Elena, was a woman pushing 40 with an air of untouchable elegance that made her seem like she belonged in some glossy magazine spread. She barely spoke to me, maybe 3 sentences at most on a good day, usually clipped instructions like, trim the roses today, or make sure the driveway's clear. To me, she was this beautiful, cold statue, sharp features, dark hair always pulled back neatly, and eyes that seemed to look right through you. Unreachable. I caught glimpses of her pacing the veranda at dusk sometimes, her gaze lost in the horizon, but I never dared linger. What was I to her? Just the help. That Friday night changed everything. There'd been one of her fancy dinner parties catered by some high-end service, but I was stuck handling the cleanup. Crystal glasses clinking in the sink, silverware soaking, scraps of gourmet food tossed into bins. It was pushing midnight by the time I finished, my back aching, sweat drying on my shirt. I stepped out the back door heading to my room when something caught my eye, a flash of red slipping around the corner of the hallway leading to the garden. Curiosity got the better of me. I shouldn't have followed it, but my feet moved anyway, quiet on the stone path. The garden was shrouded in night fog, the moon casting a silvery glow over the climbing vines and flower beds I'd tended that week. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Elena. She was wearing this stunning red dress that hugged her figure, the back dipping low, exposing skin that gleamed under the moonlight. Her hair was down, cascading over her shoulders in loose waves, and she held a glass of wine that swirled gently in her hand. Her face, usually so composed, was softened by a quiet sadness, like she was lost in some private world. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to break free. I'd never seen a woman look so breathtaking, so alone. It wasn't just her beauty, it was the raw vulnerability in that moment, standing there like a living painting, the fog curling around her ankles. I must have made a sound, a twig snap, or my breath catching, because she turned slowly. Our eyes met. Not the boss-employee glance I'd gotten used to, but something deeper, like she'd been caught in a moment she hadn't meant for anyone to see. A beat passed, the air thick with unspoken tension. You planning on going somewhere dressed like that? Her voice wasn't sharp or accusing, it was almost inviting, pulling me into a reality I hadn't known existed. I bowed my head, stammering like an idiot. I was just grabbing my jacket. She tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. But in her eyes, I saw a flicker of something fragile, like she didn't quite know why she was out here in that dress, at this hour, crossing paths with me of all people. My chest tightened. In that silent night, something cracked open, just a hairline fracture. And I knew. Sometimes the moments that flip your life upside down start with the simplest question. The next morning, I woke up with that image burned into my mind. Elena in red, the moonlight, that quiet sadness. I tried to shake it off as I started my chores, washing breakfast dishes, weeding the flower beds, but it lingered. She didn't mention it when she passed by the kitchen window, giving me her usual nod. But I couldn't look at her the same. She wasn't just my boss anymore. She was a mystery, a woman carrying weights I couldn't see, but suddenly wanted to understand. Days blurred after that. I found myself stealing glances during my shifts, her sitting alone on the patio with a book she barely read, or staring out at the ocean from the upper balcony. There was a loneliness there, hidden behind her poised exterior. I wondered about her life. The villa was too big for one person, echoing with emptiness. No family photos on the walls, no visitors except for those stiff dinner parties. Who was she when no one was watching? One evening, as the sun dipped low, I was raking leaves in the garden when I heard soft footsteps. She appeared at the edge of the path, still in her work clothes, a crisp blouse and slacks, but her hair was loose again, like that night. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer than usual. "The roses look good. You've got a steady hand." I straightened up, wiping dirt from my palms. "Thanks, just doing my job." She lingered, her eyes on the flowers. "My mother planted these. She always said they needed patience." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. Then she met my gaze. Sometimes I think I forgot how to be patient with myself. I didn't know what to say. My heart raced again, just like that night. Everyone needs a break sometimes. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe? Good night, Ethan." As she walked away, I stood there, rake in hand, feeling like I'd glimpsed something real. That red dress wasn't just a random moment, it was a crack in her armor. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I wanted to be the one to help mend it, or at least stand by while she did. The routine shifted subtly after that. She'd ask for small things. Could you check the fountain pump? Or, the herbs need watering. But there was a warmth now, a lingering in her questions. One rainy afternoon, I was fixing a leak in the greenhouse when she brought out a mug of hot coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing it over. Our fingers brushed, and I felt a spark, literal and figurative. "Appreciate it." She stayed, leaning against the doorframe as rain pattered on the glass roof. "You don't talk much about yourself. Where are you from?" "Small town up north. Nothing special. Came here looking for work." She nodded. "I get that. This place was my parents' dream. Now it's just mine." Her voice trailed, and I saw that sadness again. That night, lying in my cramped room, I replayed it all. The red dress, the coffee, the shared silences. Something was building, slow and inevitable. But I was just the groundskeeper. What right did I have to feel this way? Little did I know that simple question in the garden was just the start. The real change was coming, one quiet moment at a time. After that night, I couldn't see Elena the same way anymore. She wasn't just the distant boss handing out tasks. She was a person with layers I hadn't imagined. I started noticing the little things, the quiet signs that slipped through her composed facade. In the early mornings, she'd sit on the veranda with a mug of coffee clutched in her hands, staring out at the foggy hills, but she'd never take more than a sip before setting it down untouched. Afternoons, she'd wander into the garden, pausing by the lavender beds I'd planted, standing there for what felt like forever, her fingers hovering near the blooms but never picking one. And those phone calls? Short, clipped conversations that ended with her hanging up, followed by a deep, almost inaudible sigh as she pressed her forehead against the window. I didn't ask questions. What right did I have? I was just the 24-year-old kid from nowhere, scraping by on this job. But those glimpses stirred something in me, a mix of pity and a deeper pull, like I wanted to reach into that loneliness and pull her out, even though I knew I wasn't qualified. It felt foolish, dangerous even, but I couldn't stop it from growing. One day, the sky opened up with a heavy downpour, the kind that turns the hillside paths into muddy streams. I was out back, fumbling with tarps to cover the firewood stacks, rain soaking through my shirt and chilling me to the bone. That's when I heard her voice calling from the second-floor window. "Come inside, you're getting drenched." I hesitated, water dripping from my hair into my eyes. Elena stood there, umbrella in hand, barefoot, her hair loose and unbrushed, no makeup to hide the faint lines of exhaustion around her eyes. She looked more human than ever, vulnerable in a way that twisted something inside me. I stepped in through the side door, tracking mud on the tiles, feeling out of place in the warmth of the house. She handed me a towel and a steaming mug of something herbal. "I don't know if you've eaten dinner yet. If it's not too much trouble, I made extra." It was the first time we sat at the same table, not because of some obligation or politeness, but just because. The kitchen was dimly lit, rain hammering against the windows like a distant drum. She served simple pasta with herbs from the garden. Nothing fancy, but it tasted like home, something I hadn't felt in years. As we ate, she started talking, her voice soft, like she was testing the waters. "This villa, it was my parents'. They built it from nothing, poured everything into it. Now it's just me rattling around in here." She twirled her fork, not really eating. "That red dress you saw me in? It was my mother's. She wore it for their 20th anniversary party. I put it on that night because, I don't know, I wanted to feel like I still had a family, even if it's just memories. I listened without interrupting, my heart sinking with each word. The weight she carried, it explained the distant stares, the untouched coffee. She wasn't cold, she was guarded, scarred by loss. When I finally spoke, it was quiet. I get it. Sometimes holding on to things like that is all we've got. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a flicker of surprise, like she hadn't expected understanding from someone like me. The rain eased outside, but inside the air felt charged, warmer. That evening, as I headed back to my room, she called after me from the doorway. "Thank you for not asking why." I turned, holding her gaze longer than I should have. "Some sorrows you don't need to ask about. You just need to be there." From that day on, things shifted between us. It started small, conversations that stretched beyond work. She'd ask about my hometown, my reasons for coming here, and I'd share bits and pieces, the dead-end jobs back home, the urge to prove I could make it on my own. In return, she'd open up more, stories of her parents' travels, the books in her library that had shaped her. I helped her replace the flickering lights in the old study, clearing out dusty boxes of mementos from her family's past. She'd teach me the difference between black tea and green, reciting lines from Lorca's poems during lazy afternoons, or playing classical records as the sun set. The music drifting through the open windows. We didn't label it, didn't push, but we both felt it. That something growing in the spaces between our words and silences. If one of us reached out first, I knew the other wouldn't pull away. It was terrifying and exhilarating, this quiet pull drawing us closer, one shared moment at a time. Everything seemed to be falling into place in that slow, unspoken way. Elena and I, two people who shouldn't have had anything in common, were finding each other in the smallest things. An afternoon raking leaves in the yard together, the crackle of an old radio playing forgotten tunes, or a dinner that stretched long past sunset without the weight of silence. It felt natural, like we'd stumbled into a rhythm neither of us had planned. But then, as these things do, it started to scare us both. One night, I decided to try my hand at making donuts. Simple ones, fried and dusted with sugar. Something I'd picked up from watching my grandma back home. I brought a plate over to the main house after my shift, knocking softly on the kitchen door. Elena opened it, her eyes lighting up for a split second at the sight. She smiled, taking one and biting in. "These are good," she said, but then she turned away quickly, setting the plate down like it burned her. "Don't be so kind to me," she murmured, her back to me. "It's not necessary." I frowned, stepping closer. "Why not?" She paused, her shoulders tensing. "Because I don't want to have to leave again." Her words hit like a quiet punch, leaving me breathless. Leave? What did that even mean? I stood there, the plate forgotten as she busied herself with wiping a counter that was already spotless. The air between us thickened, and I left without pushing further, but that night sleep evaded me. Her voice echoed in my head, laced with a fear I didn't understand. The next day, she reverted to her old self, polite, composed, distant. No more casual invites to dinner. No texts asking if I could fix a loose shelf or borrow a tool. When our paths crossed in the yard, she'd nod briefly without meeting my eyes, hurrying back inside like I was a stranger again. I racked my brain, replaying every conversation, every glance. What had I done wrong? Was it the donuts, the growing closeness? Or had I misread everything from the start? Confusion turned to ache as the days dragged on. I threw myself into work, pruning the overgrown vines, repainting the garden shed. But my mind wandered. Then, one rainy afternoon, I heard a car pull up the driveway, tires crunching on gravel. Peeking from the greenhouse, I saw a man step out, well-dressed in a tailored coat, carrying a bouquet of flowers, laughing as Elena opened the door. They embraced lightly and she led him inside. I stood there, rain streaking the glass, feeling like an intruder in my own routine. They talked for hours. I could hear murmurs through the open window, light laughter, nods of agreement, the kind of ease that comes from shared history. Their eyes, when I glimpsed them through the curtains, seemed to belong to the same world, polished, assured, nothing like the mismatched one Elena and I had been building. I stayed outside longer than needed, getting soaked, my chest tight with a jealousy I had no right to feel. That evening, as the rain eased, Elena walked through the garden, umbrella in hand. I couldn't hold back. "Who was that today?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. She stopped, her eyes dim under the street lamp's glow. "An old flame. Someone who once wanted to marry me. And now?" The words came out raw, emotion cracking through. She was silent for a moment, rain dripping from leaves around us. "Now, I'm considering it." I nodded, swallowing hard. What could I say? I turned and walked away, the mud sucking at my boots. That night, I didn't eat, didn't sleep, just lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every smile, every brush of hands, every shared silence. I felt like a fool, a young guy, barely scraping by as the help, thinking I could step into her world. She'd been through heartbreaks, losses I couldn't fathom, loved by men who probably matched her in every way, successful, stable, worthy. What was I? A kid with dirt under his nails and dreams that didn't extend beyond the next paycheck. A few days later, she left the villa without a word. No note, no explanation, just her car gone when I arrived for my morning chores. The place felt hollow, echoing with absence. For the first time, it hit me how empty it truly was without her. Not because of the job, but because I'd lost a hope that hadn't even fully formed. I shouldn't have thought I could enter her life. I shouldn't have forgotten that some doors aren't meant for empty-handed people like me. Elena left for 3 days. I had no idea where she'd gone. No call, no message. Just the empty driveway staring back at me when I showed up for work the next morning. The villa felt like a shell, cold and echoing, stripped of whatever life it had started to hold. I went through the motions, mowing the lawn under a gray sky, wiping down the kitchen counters that still smelled faintly of the herbs we'd chopped together, scrubbing the greenhouse glass until my hands ached. But it all felt pointless, mechanical. No one to share a quick lunch with. No scribbled note on the counter asking if I'd fixed the leaky faucet yet. The place wasn't just quiet. It was hollow, like her absence had sucked the air right out of it. I tried to convince myself it was for the best. Maybe she'd realized the same thing I had, that this pull between us was a mistake, a fleeting distraction for her, and a foolish dream for me. She had a life, a history with people who fit her world. I was just the guy who trimmed the hedges, but the thoughts looped endlessly. Her in that red dress, the warmth of her hand brushing mine over coffee, the way her eyes softened when she talked about her parents. It hurt more than I expected, a dull ache that settled in my chest and wouldn't leave. By the third day, the rain started, a steady, relentless downpour that matched the fog in my head. I finished early, retreating to my room with a sandwich I barely touched, listening to the water drum against the roof. Sleep came in fits, broken by dreams of her walking away down that garden path. Around midnight, a knock echoed through the storm, sharp, insistent. I bolted up, heart pounding, and stumbled to the door. It was her. Elena, drenched to the skin, no umbrella, her hair plastered to her face, clothes clinging like she'd walked through the rain without a second thought. Water pooled at her feet on the threshold. I stood there, frozen, words failing me completely. She hesitated, her voice a whisper over the roar of the storm. "Can you let me in? Just for tonight." I stepped aside, my mind reeling as she entered. I grabbed a towel from the hook, handing it to her without a word, then busied myself making tea, anything to fill the silence. She dried off slowly, sitting on the edge of my worn armchair, her eyes red-rimmed and shadowed. The mug steamed in her hands as she wrapped her fingers around it, but she didn't drink. "I didn't go back to him," she said finally, her voice hoarse, breaking the quiet. I nodded, leaning against the wall, not trusting myself to look at her fully. Relief flickered, but it was buried under the hurt. After a long pause, she continued, her words slow and weary, like she'd traveled miles in her mind. "I left because I was scared. If I stayed, I wouldn't have the courage to admit how much I need you." She set the mug down, her gaze lifting to meet mine. "I've lived long enough to know no one wants to tie themselves to a woman like me. Older, complicated, carrying all this baggage." I looked up then, my eyes stinging. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you not to disappear anymore." Her lips trembled, her voice cracking. I thought, if you didn't see me, you'd forget. Move on. But I'm the one who couldn't stop remembering every little thing, the way you listen without judging, the quiet way you fixed that old lamp in the study, the donuts you made just because. I moved closer, sitting on the ottoman across from her. No touching, no embracing, just letting the silence wrap around us, heavy but not oppressive. Rain lashed the windows, but inside it felt like a barrier against the world. After what felt like forever, she leaned forward slightly, her head tilting to rest lightly on my shoulder. If you'll let me, I want to start over. Not with contracts or expectations, but with the kindness you've shown me from the beginning. I nodded softly, my throat tight. Then I reached into my pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, creased and worn from being carried around. It was the first paycheck stub she'd given me for the grounds work, the one that marked me as just an employee. I'd kept it as a reminder of how this all started. Transactional, distant. If you'll let me, I said quietly, let's tear this up. So from now on, when you knock on my door, it's not for any reason other than you want me there. She smiled then, tears slipping down her cheeks. Not from pain this time, but from release. We didn't say, I love you. Didn't make grand promises. We just sat there in that rainy night, choosing to stay. Spring came to the villa that year like a quiet promise, warming the hillside and chasing away the chill that had lingered too long. The place didn't feel empty anymore. It breathed with a new rhythm, one Elena and I built together, day by day. I still handled my usual tasks, tending the garden, fixing the occasional creaky gate, planting fresh rows of lavender that bloomed in vibrant purple waves under the California sun. But now, it wasn't solitary work. On Saturday mornings, Elena would brew coffee herself, strong and black the way I liked it, and bring 2 mugs out to the yard. She'd sit beside me on the stone bench, not saying much at first, just listening to the birdsong mingling with the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Those moments felt sacred, like we'd carved out a space where words weren't always needed. The kitchen transformed too. No longer was it just a place for me to grab a quick bite over the sink before retreating to my room. Evenings became shared rituals, Elena chopping vegetables while I stirred a pot, simple meals like fried eggs on toast or pasta tossed with garden herbs. Sometimes we'd burn the bread or oversalt the sauce, but it didn't matter. The laughter that followed filled the room, echoing off the walls in a way that made the villa feel alive, like a home instead of a relic. We'd talk about nothing and everything. Her favorite books from the dusty library shelves, my half-forgotten stories from back home, or just the way the light hit the ocean at dusk. It was easy, unforced, the kind of connection that sneaks up on you until you can't imagine life without it. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low and painted the stone fence in golden hues, Elena walked out to the garden with a small wooden box in her hands. She didn't hand it to me right away. Instead, she set it on the table between us, her fingers lingering on the lid like it held something fragile. My mother once told me, she said softly, sitting down beside me, that if I ever believed in love again, I should keep this family heirloom for the right reasons, with my own hands. I opened the box carefully. Inside lay a silver ring, aged and simple, with a faint engraving on the inside. Esperanza, Spanish for hope. It caught the fading light, gleaming like a quiet vow. Elena watched me, her expression a mix of vulnerability and peace. No wedding, she said gently. No big promises. Just every year on that same night, the one where you saw me in the red dress, we'll sit right here. We'll talk about what we've overcome in the past year, the little wins and the hard days. I took her hand, squeezing it lightly, a smile tugging at my lips. And if it rains one of those years, we'll tell our stories in the kitchen instead. We both laughed then, the sound light and free, cutting through the evening air. We didn't say, I love you. We didn't need to. It was all there, clear as the stars starting to prick the sky, in the way she leaned into me and the shared glances that spoke volumes, in the simple act of choosing each other over and over. Looking back, I once thought love was about grand gestures, the kind you see in movies with fireworks and declarations that shake the world. But it turns out, it's quieter than that. It's someone opening the door when you're standing in the rain, soaked and unsure, and staying there long after the storm passes.